Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, our very special guest is Michael Murphy. Michael is an award-winning director and producer, a political activist, and president of the Coalition Against Geoengineering. As an independent reporter and community organizer, his work includes directing and co-producing the groundbreaking geoengineering documentaries, Why in the World Are They Spraying? And What in the World Are They Spraying? Each film has awakened millions to the environmental threats of the geoengineering programs. In tonight's discussion, Michael talks to us about how the geoengineering and chemtrail movement has been co-opted. He speaks openly and frankly about the personal attacks levied against him by another leading activist in an attempt to undermine his role in the movement and damage his credibility. Michael explains that although these tactics did set him back, he has regrouped and ready to bring his geoengineering activism back to the forefront and bringing awareness to millions across the globe to reach critical mass. And to kick our conversation off, I asked Michael how he got started in his geoengineering research. And here is what he had to say.
Well, I like to call it as a calling from God. I mean, the doors literally opened, but it was interesting because I went to college at Arizona State University, and that was back in the late 80s. And I noticed that the skies were deep blue, and I had moved from Chicago. Obviously, we get a lot of adverse weather here. So I was amazed by that, and often looking up at the sky. Rarely did we have a blemish in the sky. I had moved several years after graduation, had moved to Hawaii and some other areas for a while, but then I returned back to teach. I was a teacher for a couple of years, and when we went outside for PE, and during the breaks for the children, I noticed about 4 to 5 days out of the week we had what appeared to be cirrus clouds in the sky. Probably 4 to 5 days again a week. So I knew something was changing in our atmosphere, didn't know what it was. And I think the first time I saw somebody talking about chemtrails, I really thought that they were crazy. It wasn't until somebody had pointed out a plane in the sky leave a trail, and they said, keep your eye on that for a while. That's going to spread out. It's going to turn into what you're seeing in the skies on a regular basis. So it sparked my interest. Of course, I hit the internet, a lot of websites out there, a lot of information, and became interested in this. But what really sparked my interest was back in 2010, I was invited to go to the American Association for now I'm forgetting the acronym, it's been so long, but a geoengineering conference down in San Diego. For several days, I heard about geoengineers talk about their plans and proposals to spray 10 to 20 million tons of toxic aluminum oxide and other chemicals into our sky for what they said was the stated goal of mitigating global warming. And the idea is by putting a reflective and very lightweight metal into the sky, such as aluminum, that will reflect sunlight back into space and actually cool the planet. Now we found studies that actually indicate the contrary because, you'll notice on certain days when it's sunny out, they'll start to spray, temperature drops, maybe 8, 9 degrees. However, at night, as we know, clouds and aerosols will trap heat. So we've seen an increase in nighttime highs. So there's a lot of questions about, what the true purpose is and what in the world are they spraying. We focused on the contamination, and I hope everybody watches this. It's available for free on YouTube, or go to stopspraying.us for more information. We encourage everybody who gets a DVD to make as many copies as you can, get active and hand those out. But in Why in the World Are They Spraying? That became a multi-award winning film. It won over 14 awards. And I've traveled all across the US and Europe addressing this issue. And there's no question that one major component of these programs is weather control. And I didn't know why at first. Had no idea. Why would somebody want to control the weather? It wasn't until I really dug in and I looked at some of the monetary, the political, and then even some of the agricultural reasons behind this. And we found out, these programs are very powerful and really an effective way to consolidate an enormous amount of both monetary and political power into the hands of a few, literally at the expense of everything on our planet. So it really concerned me. But really getting involved with this, after the Geoengineering conference, I wrote an article called What in the World Are They Spraying? And that article was just went literally viral around the internet. It was changed to several different languages, and it really linked geoengineering into the chemtrail issue. And it also linked what we're finding in thousands of times the normal amounts in rain tests and even blood tests of people around the world, which is aluminum contamination, barium, strontium. And that's really what people call the chemtrail geoengineering footprint. So this is being found again in thousands of times the normal amounts all around the world. And it's very, very toxic to both the environment, all ecosystems, our ozone layer, but especially human health as well. And what goes up must come down. So we're literally breathing in these nanoparticles every day on a daily basis. And we've seen just a great increase in illnesses related to aluminum, barium, and other types of overexposure. So it got me concerned. But getting back to, the spiritual implications of this, I can really humbly say it wasn't, my genius to produce the films that people are saying, really woke up the world, or a part of the world. We still have a lot of work to do, but helped to catapult the movement into being something that's now recognized around the world. And the doors just opened up. It started, What in the World Are They Spraying? Started with a borrowed camera. And after, again, I wrote, What in the World Are They Spraying? The doors just opened up. People started calling me up and they said, hey, if I send you a plane ticket, can you bring a camera and document my findings? And, I agreed to that. And then, of course, G. Edward Griffin, who was well known around the world, especially from his book, The Creature from Jekyll Island,
Right.
We put together a funding video because we didn't have any resources really to start this, and just overnight funding poured in. So we had the opportunities to bring some people on board, which made the film very professional, and it was a success overnight once we released it. And it's been used as a popular tool in terms of activism. People are using it not only on the internet, but also, again, we encourage people to make copies of DVDs. So it's something that people are bringing out to their street activism. And again, it's been a very effective tool in waking people up with the documented scientific information that we have.
Now, Michael, the involvement you had with others in making the documentaries, at the time, did you feel it was organic, or did you sense that maybe some of the contacts were contrived?
It seemed organic at the time, in terms of who I brought on and who I communicated with. But I believe that the doors opened up, and of course, there's been this drama in terms of people who have been associating with me and them going into unethical areas, and perhaps we could talk a little bit about that. But generally, I think most of the people that we brought on board with the films had good motives and had good intentions, and that's why it was such a success. Occasionally, you get somebody, you find out, their intentions might not be 100% pure, and that eventually comes to light. So that can create a great challenge in what we're trying to accomplish. Anytime you get somebody who's operating in an unethical capacity and you're yoked with them, that's going to affect you. And we reach millions and millions of people and continue to reach millions every week, and that has slowed down considerably, because now there's been, when we have gotten closer to our third and final film, which we believed would put an end to these programs, we saw all types of resistance. So
I can imagine.
It's been a very very interesting and also very challenging year. But there's a silver lining. While it's not pleasant to go through, my heart is in activism. Never wanted to get involved with legal issues. Never wanted to to get outside and deal with drama. And I try and hide that from my audience. But sometimes you have to address these things to bring the audience and your audience and the movement back into alignment. So I think it's been compromised in many different capacities. And my goal is really to bring back, I'm in the process of restructuring right now. And I believe that anything that is built, and especially when you go to the next level, it has to be built on 100% honesty, truth, and integrity. And if that foundation does not have those components, it is going to crumble, and it is not going to be successful. So I think it's a good thing because we're seeing not only in the chemtrail geoengineering movement um, a great amount of division, which is not good because united we stand, divided we fall. But I also think it's good to recognize these things and then to rebuild. So I'm confident that that the steps I'm taking now will allow me to move forward with those that have proven to be in integrity. And based on that, I think that the funding opportunities that we had a $2.5 million funding opportunity. An activist who we trusted had stated his intent to block that. And there were a lot of character assassinations during that time. And it did. It definitely slowed us down. And there, of course, is a lot more depth to all of this drama. But again, you have to look at that as a good thing, because had we received that funding, move forward with the people who had since proven to lack the necessary characteristics to go up to the next level, it would have been bound to fail. So, we're at that stage right now, and I only think that these challenges that we face as activists, if we allow them to teach us, if we allow them to make us wiser and stronger, we can only have future success with them. So just like weight training, any resistance that we get as activists can be used to strengthen us. We can either let it kill us, let it chase us away from the movement, or become stronger, more wise, and thus be ready and prepared to move to the next level. And this issue is something that right now we have about 8% global awareness. That's according to a recent survey by geoengineers, and critical mass is 10%. So once you hit critical mass, it's highly likely that your issue that you're covering will be common knowledge amongst most of society. And once we hit that, we can get legislation stopped. And the reason I say that is because geoengineers now are calling for a quote unquote climate emergency. And they're looking at various ways to curb the supposed CO2 threat of global warming. And the most and quickest, most cost-effective manner would be to utilize geoengineering, so putting chemicals into our sky. And despite all of the negative consequences, because it's a perceived problem by about 46, I think, percent of the population, a lot of people are willing to accept that. And especially when you get into what they're calling a climate emergency, what I believe they're planning on doing is bypassing Congress and the other steps required to put these types of programs into law so that they can create this government. The concern of mine, well, there are many concerns, but another concern, at least politically, is geoengineers claim that because these programs are very powerful, they can be misused, which they are being misused. They can be used for warfare purposes. They state, whose hand would be on the thermostat? Countries would fight wars over this. Obviously, me and hopefully most of the audience would agree that nobody's hand should be on the thermostat other than the hand of nature. However, so what they're talking about is establishing a global government to monitor these programs and initiate these programs. And it's very scary because they're talking about, some of the rewards that they would give countries that would subscribe to these programs. And I think some of those rewards could be rain. I think some of them could be, some in the countries that don't subscribe to them. I think there could be some pretty severe consequences, which we didn't get too much into. But politically, it's literally a race for time, because once we hit critical mass, which again is very close, it will be next to impossible for them to establish these the necessary legislation to make these illegal programs legal. So they're trying to move very quickly. We've had great resistance, but the movement is still growing, exponentially. So it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. And I think we have a very, very good chance, if we continue moving forward in an ethical capacity and in a truthful manner, to bring this out into the open where it's on the mainstream. And stop these programs. And I believe that we do have that opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity. So I'm very excited about that.
Now, Michael, you had mentioned before that you had a $2.5 million commitment and then it was sabotaged. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, well, without question, it was interesting because during this time we had funders who had said put together $2 and $3 million um, budget for your next film, and some of the things that we were going to do with that was to create uh, an organization which would be a global organization with outreach. So we would have somebody focusing on establishing campus clubs, addressing this and really focus on education. We would have somebody, a funded team to go out and lobby, so that these programs do not take place. And at any rate, we're going to use this 2.5, a big chunk of that to not only produce the film, but to use, several $100,000 for advertisement.
And this would have been
And
the third film?
this
Who?
would have been the third film, Who in the World Are They Spraying? So
Okay.
I brought an individual who we brought on both of our films. We had promoted his website in many different capacities, and he was acting very, very strange and trying to get us down to only asking for $60,000. And I cannot make a professional quality film that would really have an impact on the world, and that was the goal. Goal was to utilize that funding. With 2.5, I could definitely get this into theaters, and then using a big chunk of that in terms of for advertising to make sure this gets on the mainstream media. So we had, a very strong shot. And then, of course, we had a lot of funding available for not only a full crew, but also for full investigators and people to really dig into this so that we had 100% accuracy. So yeah, the one of the individuals started acting very funny and came out and accused me publicly on the very website that we promoted, as being a drug addict, and really scared away not only, I believe, the funders that had that substantial funding, but my everyday funders. And his excuse for bringing this up was, well, I had to protect the movement because Michael would have used this money for your donated money for drugs, which I absolutely deny. Using any donated money for drugs or anything unethically, I very much respect this. And those accusations were very effective. They were character assassinations. Very effective in making people withdraw their support, not only monetarily, but also the radio contacts. I had shared my 80 or so radio contacts with this person, who now apparently has, what I'm hearing is, has destroyed a lot of those relationships. So I was probably reaching about 1 million people per week, on the various radio interviews and through our social media. And this person, I felt like they essentially utilize these character assassinations. Well, let's go over what a character assassination is. I wrote what I believed, based on my experiences, to be my most important article because it addresses some of the ways that movements are infiltrated. And if you Google, has the chemtrail geoengineering movement been infiltrated, you'll find the article. And again, it's relevant to all movements, and because these things come in and these things happen. But a character assassination is defined as a vicious personal attack designed to destroy a public figure's reputation. And that is used for people who want to co-opt, or the definition of co-opting is diverting a movement. So a lot of times what they will do is rarely do they address the person's work. I stand behind every single thing that I've done, everything that I've said in the public realm related to this. And so they use this, stating that I think it was either a drug addiction or a substance abuse problem, to really, again, and they did it in a very manipulative way, in I guess convincing or manipulating my funders and the people that supported me that, if they continued supporting my work, either the money would be used for hard street drugs, or that something terrible would happen to their cause. And it was effective. And these things typically are effective, and they're initially undetected because, as I wrote in the article, what an effective character assassination will do, it will hit the emotional chord of the group or groups that you're involved with. So again, it rarely addresses the specific work. It addresses an emotional chord. So that emotional chord, again, makes people have a negative image upon who the attack was targeted at. And again, it's rarely initially noticed due to that emotion. So it was effective in this person, kind of what I felt was I had worked very hard developing my audience and especially the radio contact. So I was on the phone, 8, 10 hours a day trying to get this issue on the airways. And in doing so, I was able to, again, reach about probably 4 million people a month. And all of a sudden, after these character assassinations, and even after this person stated their attempt to block the $2.5 million funding, which we would be at critical mass now, boom, phone quit ringing, boom. I contacted some of my funders and they said, you're a drug addict and everything. So I got put into this position where I was forced to defend myself about an issue that's not even related to geoengineering or to our common goal. And that's the goal. It's to take people away from their activism and get them into a position where they're spending all of their time, stating, wait, look at my work, show me where I've seemed intoxicated, blah, blah, blah. What this person did after they did that, they assumed my role. So they started taking the radio shows, and what I have heard, many of those radio shows, they've gotten into disagreements and dissolved the relationships that we had. So when we're reaching about this impacted a lot of people. And
Michael, let me ask you one question. What was the rationale of this person to go from $2.5 million to $60,000? And that just seems to be absurd. What was their rationale for going to $60,000?
Based on what I've heard, because when I did bring another gentleman in, and apparently he said, well, you can't ask for 2.5 million. They won't give you that funding. And I was very clear. I said, they told us to put in a bid for between $2 and $3 million. I'm not going to take myself out of this, and I can't do what we need to do to bring this issue to the next level. So we're scratching our head. Apparently, this person now is trying to, what I have heard is that this person now is trying to say, oh, Michael could have made a film on $20,000 and he didn't need all of that money. And that's absolutely false. I wanted to have about $1 million left on the side just for advertising.
Of course.
And if you look at big films that are effective, because I've had other people say, I've done documentaries and I did it under $2,000. Well, hey, your documentary was great. Thank you for doing it. But it reached, 3 million or 3,000 people, 4,000 people. That's a drop in the bucket. We need to reach 1 billion people. Okay. If you look at the population, just let's say why in the world and when in the world Valley Spring reached 10 million people. That's literally nothing. That is a drop in the bucket. Fox News hits that every hour. They hit that every hour. We've been working on this for 4 years. So, to think that, you can play with films such as Michael Moore's films and some of the Hollywood films and get that type of exposure. And that's what we need to get these programs stopped with a $30,000 budget. It's just ludicrous. We actually would probably require a little bit more money, but we would, that 2.5, it would have been a game changer because we would have gone over this $3 million. So again, I think again, the people who are asking him questions, he's trying to convince them that I didn't need that amount of money. And no, I didn't need that amount of money to complete a film, but to achieve our objectives at getting these programs stopped, that budget was absolutely essential. I'm confident that it's going to come back because the air is clearing. People are now, I'm getting emails from activists all around the world. They're saying, wow, we now see what's going on. We support your work, Michael. Thank you. But it took me out. It took me out for a while. And I'm kind of grateful because it did give me time to rest. I was really burnt out, working 7 days a week and nonstop, and probably, not very strong to receive that $2.5 million funding. I also heard, I'm still getting several phone calls and emails that not only did this individual mention this in a very unethical and unprofessional way publicly on the very website that we promoted, not once, several times, did a 2-hour radio show on it. But then people were sending me emails where he had mentioned this in several, during several presentations, claiming that I'm a drug addict. That is not professional. and also on several different radio shows. And then I received God knows how many, probably over 50 or 100 correspondences with activists who I didn't even know, stating that they received a call from this individual. And they said, I thought it was really crazy because this individual called me, and for 20 minutes they were talking about, saying that I was beating my wife, um, uh, using street drugs, and indicating, I don't know if they've ever made the correct accusation, stating that I was using drugs for donation money, but I think the excuse was, well, I had to inform everybody, so because they were donating, so it was really indicating that I was using funds in an unethical capacity. It turns out now, after an audit, we found out that my business partner Barry Kulski had gone on vacation. He had gone to lumber stores. I have this fully documented. He had used donated money, $3,700 or $3,800 at a car dealership. All of these unrelated business expenses. So that was something that we had to notify our funders. When I found out that the donations were missing, I have been asking Barry, oh God, for almost a year now, for about 10 months to provide the accounting. That was contractually his obligation, to provide me a monthly report. He refused to do so. So I knew something was wrong. And I was unable to obtain that information while I was in Hawaii because I had limited internet and they didn't have the bank that we were connected with. It was finally when I got back into Chicago, I had to hire some accountants and look at this, and wow, we found out that a lot of money is missing. So I had to notify, after again making pleas to Barry, saying, Barry, let's handle this privately. I don't want this to get out into the public, sending him emails. And I finally said, listen, this is an issue that we have to deal with. If you don't address it with me, it's going out to the public and it will get handled. So unfortunately, he chose the route to deny and try to say that he used these funds ethically and with the production, and that was outside of our agreement. So unfortunately, the people who donated or funded Who in the World Are They Spraying for production, which the production has not started in any capacity, the agreement was that we would put out a funding video, and that funding video would bring in monies to move forward in the production. We never moved forward in any capacity. Nor did I approve us moving forward in any capacity. And we decided back, it was probably in February or March, to pull down the funding website. And I said, no more, no more spending or moving forward at all until we go over the accounting. To date, right. I have not received any accounting from him. So you can find an article on that if you Google missing money, Michael J. Murphy, or missing money, Barry Kulski. But it breaks my heart because as an activist, we live people think I made a lot of money because the films got such great exposure. And I have to say, during this time when all of these thousands of dollars were being used for vacations and everything else, I was on public assistance and, wondering where I was going to stay. It was a very financially challenged time. But my commitment is to our donors, and we do have an obligation to act ethically and to refund their money. I'm doing all that I can, with the resources that I have right now. I am working with the police, so we'll see if the DA decides to press criminal charges for embezzlement. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but they are looking into this. So, my goal, again, was never to bring this out into the open. I didn't want the community, the activism community, to really be aware of this, because my concern is that they would be hesitant to donate, in the future. So in that email that I had sent out, and somebody actually put it out on a website, I didn't want it to go out into a website, but, it eventually made it out there. I showed the number of emails that I had sent out asking for the accounting, and then really asking Barry to handle this, behind the scenes. And unfortunately, he chose a different route. So I had to go public with it. And the person who was making all of these character assassinations, again, was indicating that I was using money unethically. So I think the goal was to probably try to, state, hey, Michael was using this unethically. That's where the money went. And, fortunately, it didn't work out that way. But what it has done for the past, year a little more than a year, I've been dealing with character assassinations. I've been dealing with these issues, and it's taken me away from my activism. So how many people has this affected? Well, let's just go and look at what I was reaching, and I estimate probably 1 million people per week. I was doing, on average about 10 radio shows per week, and then we had a Facebook page, which now was removed, unfortunately, after this had gone out into the public, and that was reaching, I think, our best week was 2.1 million per week. So just based on those figures, if you look at a year, being that this person effectively utilized these character assassinations to attempt to destroy my reputation, I believe that it has impacted at least or taken away 54 million people, if you go in the course of the year, of hearing this message. And of course, that replicates and it duplicates. So, these types of unethical types of behavior and putting down other activists really has a considerable impact. So again, I think it's impacted over 100 million people. And I was very quiet about this for a long time until I saw a pattern with it. And the individual that was really attacking me and calling people, he even called my family, was on the phone with them quite a bit, and apparently now has all of these personal emails. Why is one activist going after another activist so aggressively, something that would seem behind the normal, but there was a pattern now of him doing this to several other activists. So it appears that anybody who might be coming up with effective activism or might be making an impact within the movement, they either get character assassinated on this individual's website, or there was an instance where a YouTube channel was pulled down. I don't want to get too much into that, but there's a number of issues which has developed. So I think it's important, not to really put this person down, but to show the movement what is ethical behavior, what is acceptable, and what do we need to do to move forward in a capacity that is effective and that is in unity. And the movement in the past year, we have all of this division. We have people calling each other names, and personal attacks have no place in the public forum, and especially with gossip, that has no place in our activism. We have one common goal: it's to get geoengineering stopped. So when you hear things about people's private lives or other issues, or people that appear to be sabotaging the work of others, whether they are a paid agent or whether they're emotionally unstable in certain ways, it doesn't matter. That behavior is terrible, and we need to recognize it, and it's damaging behavior, and we need to hold them accountable. And that's absolutely essential.
Did you ever confront this person, Michael? Because let me just make this one comment. I am well aware of these attacks that were made on you firsthand, in fact. And so you're telling this story, and you're saying that he's contacted your family directly?
Yes, that is correct.
I mean, that's bizarre. So did you confront this person and ask him, hey, what is this all about? Why are you doing this?
Yes. Actually, after the website post, I had sent an email out, and that individual was coming down to speak to a group in Los Angeles. So I had asked, first, show me your proof, of these accusations. B, show me how this would be beneficial to the movement, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I will be at the event that you're speaking at to ask these questions. And I sent it out to a small number of people to encourage them to ask this. And I also let him know, I've been involved in public outreach and community organizing on the south side of Chicago for a number of years. So I've seen character assassinations and other things literally bring down movements very quickly, which it did. It slowed us down so much. So I asked him why he was doing it. And the response basically was, get a grip, you need help. So he refused to show up to that, nor did he show up to the speaking engagement that I was going to confront him publicly. He refused to take any phone calls or respond to any emails. So, and I'm aware of other people that have asked for, an affidavit of proof of these accusations and everything else. And I think it's really important that we have documentation before we go ahead and bring something to the public. And that's why, when the donated funds were missing, I hired an accountant. I went through this, and I provided screenshots, of the questionable purchases, and that were related to the business. I provided those. And anytime, if we believe that somebody is acting in an unethical manner, which again, I stand behind everything that I've said, everything that I've done while addressing this issue public. Am I perfect? Absolutely not, as no individual is. However, private lives are private, public lives are public. And as a movement, we have a common goal. And it's our duty to, if we see somebody who might, for instance, be struggling with addiction, is it our job to announce this to the entire movement and make phone calls and encourage funders not to fund that person? Absolutely not. It's our duty to lift that person up and not to put them down, especially public, due to the damage that it can do. Now, this individual is stating that, I had to do it, to protect the movement. Well, where's the proof? And let's really look at this. This person made several phone calls to probably people I don't even know. Spent a lot of time. It's almost like there was a telemarketing crew, calling to alert everybody how I was damaging to the movement. Show me my work that would indicate, my public work. During the time of these accusations, I did a number of public appearances, hundreds of radio shows, and continued my work. And none of my work reflects this, unless I'm unable to see this. So, but it was done in a very effective way where people initially bought into it and did withdraw their support. That support is coming back. And thank you very much, for covering this issue. My radio shows are now coming back, so I'm starting to move forward again. But I just want to address how damaging this is and why it's important to recognize when character assassinations come in, just how damaging they can be, especially for somebody who, is reaching, the most amount of people in the movement. It's been said that our films were the most effective in terms of getting the public behind this issue. And it's very clear what this person did was essentially, I brought them up on stage and I was hoping to lift them up, introduce them to my audience so that they could, reach as many people as me. And I think that's the way that we need to grow the movement, is really support each other in our work so that we can all be growing, replicating, and expanding. But, I feel like this person, saw a weak point. I was burnt out, was going through some personal issues. I felt like they kicked me off stage and then they came up and said, hey, I'm the new king or I'm the new leader. Not that I was a king and not that anybody should be. And now you have to listen to my rules. If you disagree with me, I'm going to put you up and criticize you and try and destroy your reputation on my website. Or, if you disagree with me, I'm going to try and get your YouTube channel pulled off or, XYZ. And it was really a lot of people who were bringing out good information that became victims of this individual. So it's, I have never seen a movement diverted so quickly and so effectively in my life. And I know a number of people who have reached out to this person, to ask them to get back on point and stuff. And the person doesn't seem to budge. So I have been accused of stating this person was an agent for such and such company. I'm very careful with my words. I have never made that accusation. I do have concerns. However, it doesn't matter. Damaging behavior is damaging behavior. It does look like COINTELPRO. If you look back at the Black Panthers, what they did, they got involved with the family life. They were involved in character assassination. So it looks like it. Do I have proof? No, I don't have proof. And I'm really not concerned about proof. What I'm concerned about is moving forward in this movement. You have to identify people who are damaging, whether they bring about 95% incredible information. You can use information and your influence really to bring down and destroy a movement. So it's a time where we can't afford to make these mistakes. We're too close to critical mass, and it's time to start moving forward, stop looking backwards, and move past this. Recognize it for what it was. If this person continues in that behavior, he's not going to be involved with me. He's not going to move up to the next level, unless there was a huge public apology, but he continues, to bring about these assassinations, not only to me, but to a lot of leading people in the movement. So to me, that's damaging.
Well, his comments made me take a step back with regard to him, because I remember when I heard the comments, my initial thought was, why are you saying this? It goes to your point. If somebody has personal issues or challenges that they're working through, let's keep it personal. So I think to a large degree, Michael, I mean, at least my perspective is these things, these personal attacks that were made upon you, they backfired.
I think in the long run, yes. And the truth always comes out. And this is not whether I've ever inhaled something or ever smoked something. I'll be very clear about that. There are a lot of people that engage in those activities. The fact is it's not relevant to our work. And his side of the story is, well, because Michael was receiving funding, I had to alert our donors. Well, it turns out the money is missing, and I have a pure accounting. I stand behind everything I've done business-wise, and it turns out there's a lot of questionable purchases and mismanagement and misuse of the money that was donated. For who in the world are they spraying? So
Yeah.
that absolutely was false. And yeah, the truth eventually does come out. But the damage is there.
Yeah, no, I know the damage is there, but what I'm saying is eventually it's going to come around. What comes around goes around. It will backfire.
I think it has because I've just from what people have been telling me, they just see this type of continued behavior from this individual or a couple other people, and they've withdrawn their support. And you would never see this in a corporation. You would never see this. You do see these types of things in rough political battles from different sides who have different agendas. We're supposed to have the same agenda, and there's a way that you deal with things, and especially when you get into the public eye. And this is, I believe, based on what we're looking at. And in terms of the time period, the time is very short for reaching the necessary people that we need to reach to take the appropriate action. And whether it was a mistake, whether it was made by emotion, whether agenda, that's not for me to say. But what I can say is the damage was there. And we don't, when we're in the public eye, and especially when we're gaining, when we have most of the audience looking at us, we can't afford to make these mistakes. And unfortunately, it becomes acceptable then. Others think when they look up to somebody who's perceived as a leader, they think, oh, maybe this is acceptable behavior, and maybe we should focus on what somebody drank the other night, or what somebody's doing, or the problems they're having in their life. Bottom line is that's outside of our common goal, and it does divert us. And that was the movement, without question, was co-opted, it was diverted, but it does eventually restore. And I think we're seeing that restoration process right now. And that's an important process. And what I think it does, at least for me, I look back, and it was a challenging year, because obviously it brought challenges in from people who were very close to me. It brought challenges in to my family and the finances, because we were living in the low community of Inglewood, California. When the funding was withdrawn, it put me in a financial position that you wouldn't even want to imagine, without a vehicle, and trying to continue to address this issue. So with those great challenges, those of us who persevere, we become stronger. So now I feel like, it was almost preparing me to go up to the next level and to address this in a manner, and to get used to the character assassinations. And I can tell you, after I've been called so many things and demeaned by my family, my friends, and many in the movement, who now many have written back and expressed their apologies and had bought into this type of stuff, I feel like, hey, you can call me anything.
Yeah.
you can do anything to me. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
So it's there's a silver lining outside of this major issue. It does break my heart, but that's something, and there is a little bit of anger. So I've been going through,
Of course.
a lot of prayer sessions. I try not look too much about how many challenges this has brought into my life, and how far it has really. This is not only my life work; it's my career. And
Have you thought through, Michael, the motives? Why would somebody engage in that type of behavior towards you? I know this is supposition, but have you sat down and thought, well, why is he doing this?
Oh, yeah, initially I did. And as I wrote in the article, there are a lot of motives that can come into an activist or somebody. And one theory, and again, I have no proof, it's for 50 or 60 years, FBI's COINTEL program. We've had people infiltrate groups and create division. And these are not people that come in with an FBI badge and flash it to everybody. they're usually people who get into positions of influence. They come with very good attributes, and they become highly respected members of the group or groups that they get involved with. And that's where they have the ability to bring in their division, and things like that. But, there is an emotional, component to this. And it could be somebody, which I covered in the article, it could be somebody who has an unresolved issue, with them. And let's say it's somebody who may have grown up where they had a parent commit adultery on their mother, and it really harmed them. And in a position of leadership, because they're angry about that, in that unresolved issue, they can project those problems to other members within the group. And while we all have unresolved issues, and you typically can see this when it seems abnormal, when somebody seems overly obsessed about something and about criticizing people publicly, it could be an unresolved issue. And it's so important that we compartmentalize these unresolved issues when we address our work, because if we don't, then we risk projecting our anger onto other members of the group, and that can really destroy the cohesiveness. Now, I definitely have some unresolved issues in terms of anger. There's anger here, but I try to compartmentalize that and address this in the most effective and productive manner. And my goals are really, in writing that article, was not to, shame on this person and really put them down. And I didn't even mention their name, but it was to make the movement wise as to what's going on, and the potential, it's not accusatory. There are many different reasons that people do this. And the light that went on in my head was, I had walked into my mother's house, and she was friends with a psychologist, and they're part of this Christmas group. And this Christmas group meets every summer, and they have Christmas in July. So they have ornaments and other things. And they were talking about the same components of people using character assassinations and taking other people's positions within the group. So I spoke, he was a psychology professor at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And I said, hey, I'm very interested in what you're talking about, because I'm going through the exact same thing. So it made me look at different components as to what motives might be. However, we, as leaders and even activists in the issue of chemtrails, geoengineering, which I believe is the most important issue that we will ever have to face on the planet, we have a responsibility not only to our audience, but also to other activists. And really to ignore this responsibility is very disrespectful, not only to the people that this responsibility is owed to, but to all life on planet. And again, it's so damaging that it can destroy movements. However, I waited about 9 months, 10 months until it came up again. And a couple months ago, this resurfaced on the internet. I was on a private phone call with somebody discussing this person and some of the specific details that I had made. I was unaware that the telephone call was being recorded. Oh. And that phone call actually went out onto YouTube. So the person who I was talking about, they immediately went and posted something, and again, accusing me of being a drug addict and their excuses for using this unethical behavior. So I immediately contacted people and I said, hey, I was unaware, and I'm not supportive of recording somebody without their permission.
So that you didn't know you were being recorded, and then I remember hearing that YouTube clip. So you had no idea that they were recording and that it was going to be uploaded and released for general consumption.
I was not aware of that. No.
Unbelievable.
So I immediately got that information out to the person who was using these character assassinations. And if you listen to it, you can tell. I swore on that radio. I don't swear on radio interviews.
Yeah.
And I was driving a car, it was something that if you listen to it again, based on that information, you would know. But that person was notified. And then they went on again the next night after that notification, pretending like, I did this as to bring this thing out into the public, and just ignoring the fact that this was not made, not brought, that recording was not brought to the attention with my permission.
That's really unbelievable.
It is. However, it's God works in mysterious ways. So I think it was important for the information to get out, and I do stand behind,
Yeah.
what I said. I absolutely stand behind what I said, and that's some of the information. There's a lot more that was involved. So this issue goes deep, but I was definitely under attack. And what this person, what they typically do, they'll look for a weak point and somebody who holds a position that's of interest to them. So being I was doing most of the radio shows and everything, that's what they did. And then they exploited that to the group and of course pushed me aside and then assumed that position. And if you're not called to be there, or if you haven't worked, up from square one to learn how to the ins and outs of how to address certain things, essentially, if you're not called to be in a position, you're going to find yourself in over your head and you're going to be hit with a number of things and you're going to be making mistakes. And I think that's what happened. And, it breaks my heart, the damage that was done, not only to me, my family, but also to other activists who have endured, probably not as intense character assassinations, but really attacks on their credibility in the work that they've done. So it has slowed down a lot of radio, from what I've heard, a lot of radio hosts who were eager to cover this after getting character assassinated because they wouldn't completely agree with this individual. Now the airways are dead. They're like, listen, I have 15, 20 issues that I'd like to cover. Why would I cover geoengineering when then I get publicly blasted in front of a large audience? Reputations are important. And destroying the reputation of another person, bringing forth truth in an ethical capacity is just simply unacceptable. We're at a vital time in our planet,
Right.
and time is really short. So we need to do our best to support each other, and that's how I try and address my work. But I learned a lot. I worked hard in developing those contacts, and I gave them freely over to another individual who I trusted.
Now,
And go ahead.
I'm just going to say, Michael, I know that I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have to wrap up soon, but I have one other question. It was just gnawing at me as you were speaking. It just seems suspect to me that the next film was going to be Who in the World is Spraying? Who? And I can't help to think that perhaps some of what was going on was to keep that level of information out of the public domain. Did you think about that, or was that a thought that you had?
Oh, absolutely. And that's when I asked the question,
Okay.
when the behavior, the person was trying to get me to go on with certain agendas, which I didn't agree with. So there was behavior that was questionable. And one of the last conversations that we had, I had asked this person if they had financial interest in a certain company that appears to be related to geoengineering. And that's boom, when the attacks really ramped up. Now, does that prove anything? I don't know. I do believe this. I do believe that there are energies that have the ability to work through certain people, and whether it's a spiritual thing or whether it's electronic harassment or even mind control, as far out as that seems, there was definitely forces that were working against the work that I was trying to bring forth. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Maybe it's a good thing because, again, I needed that rest. And again, we look at the way that that the finances were handled for the little, it was just maybe $6,000. Again, I've been trying to get the accounting, but that money, clearly appears to be severely mismanaged. And had it been 2.5 million, that would have been a lot bigger of an issue. And, it could have been a protection from me. But again, I look at this as if we persevere and we continue to do the best at being professional, ethical, and truthful, I believe that we will persevere. We will get the support that we need. And that's how I try to move forward. Now, a lot of people, as soon as that recording, which again, I didn't approve of, reached the public, I got in a couple emails of people say, how dare you address this? Put this behind you. I want to be real candid. When somebody attacks me every day, when they post my post, when they do 2-hour radio shows, and they talk about this to my entire audience, I not only have the right to address this, I have an obligation.
Yes, you
So
do. Exactly
don't
right.
anybody dare tell me that I should sit there and get kicked around and demeaned for a year and a half and keep my mouth shut. That is absolutely unacceptable. I have a right to speak and I have an obligation to speak, and that's what I'm doing. The truth has to get out. And if anybody has a problem with that, that's okay. I don't want your support because you're not seeing what's going on. I'm looking for people who want to support my work in an ethical way and try to move forward with this and that can see what's going on. I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, well, you're not there to be a punching bag. Right.
Absolutely not. And
Right.
it's part of our integrity to stand up when somebody is doing this continuously and say, no, that is wrong. Stop. It's our obligation to the movement.
Well, I can tell you, Michael, I'm really glad that you came on the show. This has been a great conversation, and me personally, I'm glad you're back in the saddle.
I absolutely am. And stronger than ever, trying to get rid of trying to get rid of the anger so it doesn't come out. So for all the prayer warriors out there, please pray for me. I'm struggling with that, but I'm in this process where I'm cleaning up the mess of the past. I'm restructuring. So we're working on a interdependent global network which will focus on a couple of key areas, and this is really important. So it's going to focus on legal, it's going to focus on outreach, it's going to focus on information, media, and a couple of other areas. And instead of me addressing all of those, what we're going to have are certain people in key positions that will focus. So their job, for instance, we're talking with the chemtrail girls who have had an excellent presence on Facebook. Their duty and their job, if they come on board, is going to be to replicate themselves in terms of they've been doing a lot of street outreach and a lot of activism. So they're going to be our point of contact for that. And the legal team, their job is going to be to find other attorneys, environmental attorneys that can start to address this. We're working with the Global March Against Chemtrails and Geoengineering. So we're going to work on getting certain marches together, and that's going to be their duty. So if we pinpoint each area and have many different people and organizations working interdependently, we can't have this sort of thing that went down. So I look what happened, and again, I estimate it probably withheld the message from getting out to over 100 million people, and that's substantial. This new structure that I'm building will not be vulnerable. So one person can't be taken out and the movement can't be slowed. And that's what I've learned from it. So we're going to move forward, in this capacity and again, build a structure that is not vulnerable to these attacks so that the movement can't be slowed down. And I think it's the most effective way to move forward.
Excellent. Now, Michael, is there a website that people can head over to catch up with you?
I am in the process. I just had my main websites unfortunately sabotaged after informing our donors that the money was missing. I'm going to work on getting those back up today. I just received back. So you can, if you can get up whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com, and then you can go to stopspraying.us. And today is the day that I'm going to be doing my web work and getting things back in order. Unfortunately, again, that Facebook site had been removed after I informed my donors, and that was reaching, about 4 million people with important messages, and that was taken down, unfortunately, after that email went out. So yeah, there's been a lot of sabotaging, but I'm also working with social media to get those back up and to move forward. So I really want to encourage the audience. This is not at all something that you should be concerned about moving in as an activist, but as somebody who is, I guess, in a very small movement, which the chemtrail geoengineering movement is expanding, but it's still very small. It's not very 8% of the population is aware of this issue. This is not something I don't think is going to happen to every activist. But what I do ask is you look at where you put your support. And again, the article has the chemtrail geoengineering movement been co-opted. That again relates to all activism. And I think it will help you identify if this does happen to you, why it's happening, and what you can do to persevere and become stronger and move out of it. And that was the goal. It was to use my experiences to empower the audience that I have the opportunity to speak with.
Well, Mike, I'd love to have you come back anytime you'd like to give us updates, to get the word out, anytime.
Oh, Michael, thank you so much for for covering this and for your interest in this specific issue. It's something I really haven't spoken about too much, but I think it's about time that we discuss this and in this manner. So thanks for all your work. I have a lot of respect for you and all the issues that you're covering, and please keep it up.
Alrighty,
Really
Michael.
appreciate it.
Thank you again so much, and have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
And that concludes my interview with Michael Murphy, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Michael's websites can be found at www.whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com and at www.stopspraying.us. The link to Michael's article on the co-opting of the geoengineering movement is included in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog, The Sage of Quay. Also, if you get a moment, please take a listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia, by heading over to laboroflovemusic.com. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.